The wind had a mean way of speaking in Dust Creek, like it carried old grudges between the canyons and let them whisper across the land. It was the kind of place where time moved slow, and even slower when you were waiting for something to change. Or someone. Mary Langston wasn't waiting anymore. She sat alone in the old trading post her late father had built with his own calloused hands. The walls creaked with the sighs of wood worn by decades of sun and storms. Outside, the sky had begun to boil with that dry kind of thunder that warned of dust, not rain. It hadn't rained in months, and Mary had stopped praying for it. At 28, Mary had the hard-set eyes of someone who had seen too many sunrises alone. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a tight braid, flecked with desert grit. A pistol rested on the counter beside her ledger, and though her hands moved with the grace of habit as she tallied her inventory, her ears were always listening. Out here, silence was the loudest sound. The bell above the door didn't ring. It never did when trouble came. Instead, it was the soft crunch of boots on sun-baked earth that made her look up. A figure approached from a haze, a man tall and lean, moving like he'd been carved from the same rock that lined the distant buttes. He wore a battered hat pulled low over his brow, a duster coat flapping against his legs. His horse trailed behind him, limping slightly, saddle streaked with dried blood. Mary reached for her gun, but didn't raise it. The man didn't look like he had the strength to cause trouble. He stopped at the threshold, gripping the doorframe like a drunk grasping for balance, and then slumped forward, collapsing onto the wooden floorboards in a heap of dust and sweat. She was beside him in seconds. "Hey," she said, kneeling. "Hey, you breathing?" His face was sunburned and streaked with blood, some fresh, some dried. A jagged cut marked his forehead, and his shirt was torn near the ribs, where a dark stain was spreading. "Damn it," she muttered, checking his pulse. Faint, weak, but there. Mary dragged him inside, shutting the door behind her with her boot, and locked it. She'd seen enough raids, enough bushwhack travelers, to know this could be bait. But something in the way he had fallen, like a tree losing its last battle with the wind, told her this man wasn't here by choice. She heaved him up onto the old cot near the stove, the same one her father had lain in when the fever took him last winter. His body was heavy, dead weight. As she pulled away his shirt, she winced. A bullet wound, recent. Still weeping. Close to the lung, maybe through. The bleeding had slowed, which could mean he was dying slower than most. She grabbed her kit from behind the counter and started working. "You better not die here," she whispered. "I just cleaned this cot." She boiled water, cleaned the wound, poured whiskey into the gash. He didn't scream, didn't even stir. When she dug for the bullet with a rusted pair of forceps, her jaw clenched tight. It was deep, too deep, but after a few minutes, metal scraped against metal, and she pulled it free. A slick, blood-slick slug hit the tin tray with a clink. Mary stitched him up with steady fingers, then sat back, wiping sweat from her brow. Her heart was pounding harder than she'd admit. Not from the blood, not even from the danger. It was something else. There was a story behind this man, and the bullet didn't tell it all. She poured herself a sip of the same whiskey, watching the rise and fall of his chest. "You owe me a name, stranger," she said. He didn't answer. Not until nightfall. The lamp had burned low. Outside, the coyotes had started singing again, their songs rising over the silence like a warning or a prayer. She was dozing in her chair when the voice came, hoarse, rough. "Water." Mary jolted upright, gun in hand. But it was him, eyes half open, voice barely audible. She lowered the weapon and brought the tin cup to his lips. "Small sips," she said. "You move too fast, you'll bleed again." He drank, then coughed. A thin thread of blood stained his lip. "Name?" she asked. He blinked at her, unsure whether to answer. Then, "Cole." "Just Cole." He nodded weakly. "For now." She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "You shot." Cole shook his head, then winced. "Ambushed, riders they wore blue, but not army. Fake badges." Mary's stomach twisted. Raiders. Ex-soldiers turned bandits. There had been rumors, men robbing stagecoaches under the guise of law. She'd thought it was just ghost talk from the townsfolk. Now one of their victims lay on her cot. "Why'd they leave you alive?" she asked. Cole's gaze met hers. There was something unreadable in it. Pain, certainly, but more than that. "I didn't have what they wanted." "What was that?" He hesitated. "A girl. Took her from a ranch east of here. She couldn't have been more than 16. Mary's hands clenched around the cup. "I went after them," Cole said. But they were waiting. I killed 2. Then caught this. He pointed to his side. Mary stared at him. You chased a gang of armed raiders across the prairie for a girl you didn't know. Cole didn't answer right away. Then, softly, some things you don't walk away from, even if you could. She sat back, watching him. She didn't trust him, but she believed him. Outside, the wind had shifted. Mary stood, moving toward the window. In the distance, she thought she saw a flicker of light, campfire, maybe far out near the ridge. Riders, maybe. Waiting. Watching. She turned to Cole. If they're still out there, she said, they'll come looking. Cole closed his eyes. They will, he said. Mary checked the bullet in her pistol. Then the lock on the door. Then I guess, she muttered, you better not die before they do. The next morning rose slow and red, the kind of sunrise that looked more like a warning than a beginning. Mary stood on the porch of the trading post, one hand on her hip, the other resting lightly on the butt of her revolver. She scanned the horizon, but the world gave nothing back, just dust, emptiness, and the skeletal remains of a prairie stretched too far, in every direction. Inside, Cole stirred. He hadn't said much during the night, drifting in and out of fevered sleep. She'd sat by the door with her shotgun across her lap, listening to the coyotes argue with the wind and waiting for hoofbeats that never came. But the silence didn't ease her nerves. It only tightened them. Mary walked back inside. Cole was propped up slightly now, a sheen of sweat on his brow, his eyes sunken but alert. You look like death run over twice, she muttered, pouring him water. He gave a half smile. Better than feeling it. She handed him the cup. Fever's not breaking yet. You need rest. No time, he said hoarsely. They'll come soon. Mary frowned. How many? 6. Maybe more. Any names? He shook his head. Their leader goes by Denton. Ex-cavalry captain turned outlaw. Rides a black gelding with a white blaze. Talks like a preacher, shoots like a devil. Mary exhaled slowly. I saw 3 figures on the ridge last night, she said. Far off, but watching. My guess is they'll come at dusk. Then we've got hours. For what? She asked. Cole struggled to sit up. He winced, groaning, but didn't stop. To dig in. To make sure they don't walk away from this. Mary studied him. This man was wounded, fevered, outnumbered, and still speaking like he had a say in what came next. She should have tossed him back out into the dirt. Let fate have him. But something in her, some stubborn, worn-out piece of herself, wouldn't allow that. She sighed and grabbed her father's old rifle from the wall. I've got 1 repeater, 5 shells, a scattergun with buck, and a Colt loaded for 6. Cole nodded. You're better armed than I was. What were you thinking going after them alone? His eyes darkened. Wasn't thinking. Just saw her face. Saw how she screamed when they threw her onto the wagon. The kind of scream you don't unhear. Mary paused. He wasn't lying. Not even a little. Your horse? She asked. Cole tilted his head toward the back window. Tethered behind the well. Name's Dusty. Took a bullet through the flank, but he's got more fight in him than I do. Mary moved to the back and looked out. The horse stood awkwardly, favoring its left leg, its coat lathered with sweat and old blood. She fetched water for him, murmuring as she stroked his muzzle. The gelding didn't flinch. You keep company like this often, she called back. Cole coughed, a short laugh buried in pain. Just once. That's all it takes. By mid-morning, the heat had begun to climb. The air turned thick and still, the kind that warned of something building. Dust devils twisted far off in the basin. Birds vanished. Even the cicadas seemed to hush. Mary and Cole worked in silence. She helped him move the cot near the center of the room, less vulnerable. She boarded up the back window, piled crates along the front wall. Every creak of the floor, every scrape of a nail, felt louder than it should. You ever kill a man? She asked. 3, Cole replied without looking up. Just 3. That I didn't regret. Plenty more if you count the war. She didn't ask which side. She wasn't sure it mattered anymore. I've never killed anyone, Mary admitted. Cole met her gaze. You planning to? If they try to burn down this place, she said. If they try to take me with them. She chambered around into the Winchester. You're damn right I will. Cole nodded. Then you'll be fine. She turned away before he could see the tremble in her fingers. By late afternoon, shadows stretched long across the dry earth, and the wind picked up again. Dust rolled in low waves along the plains, licking at the porch and seeping into the cracks. The sky went from blue to rust-colored haze. Mary stood outside watching. Cole sat inside, loading bullets with shaking hands. "They're close," she said quietly. "Count the minutes," he replied. As the sun dipped toward the hills, movement appeared on the ridgeline. 6 riders. Silent. Slow. Dust rose behind them like smoke from a funeral pyre. "They don't come fast," Cole muttered, squinting through the shutter. "They want to be seen. They want us afraid." "Well," Mary said, slinging the shotgun over her shoulder, "they're about to be disappointed." She stepped onto the porch and stared them down as they approached. The leader, Denton, no doubt, rode front and center on a horse black as coal, white streak down its nose like a scar. He raised a hand. The others stopped. "Evening, ma'am," he called out, voice smooth, almost friendly. "Heard you had yourself a guest." Mary didn't answer. Denton continued. "See, we're looking for a man who goes by Cole. Took something from us." She shrugged. "Don't know any Coles." Denton laughed. "Funny, 'cause his horse is outside, and there's blood on your doorstep." Mary's jaw tightened. "Let's not play games," Denton said, dismounting with ease. "We'll take him and be gone before the moon's high. No need for anyone else to bleed." Inside, Cole raised his revolver with effort. "Don't," Mary hissed under her breath. "Not yet." Denton took another step forward, eyes glinting. Then he reached into his coat and pulled something out. A braid. Dark hair. Beads. A girl's. Mary's stomach dropped. "This hers?" Denton asked casually. "Cute little thing. Screamed like a hawk when we took her." Behind her, Cole's voice rang out like a bullet. "Drop it." Denton froze. Turned. Cole stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, pistol steady in his grip. "That girl's not yours," he said. Denton grinned. "Neither is your life, friend. But you're still holding on to it." Then came the signal, a sudden shout from one of the riders, and in the blink of an eye, chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the twilight. Mary dove behind a barrel. Cole stumbled back inside. The front of the trading post exploded in splinters as buckshot tore through the wooden panels. And just like that, the quiet town of Dust Creek was at war. The first bullet shattered a whiskey bottle on the back shelf. The second tore through the window frame, spraying glass and splinters across the floor. Mary ducked behind the overturned counter, heart hammering in her throat, eyes scanning the shadows for movement. Cole was on the ground beside her, gritting his teeth, one hand pressed hard against his side. Blood seeped through his shirt again, bright, angry red. "You shouldn't be standing," Mary snapped, grabbing a clean cloth and pressing it to his wound. "I wasn't planning on dancing," he muttered, then winced as the pressure hit muscle. Outside, gunfire erupted again. Buckshot punched through the wall inches from her head. The sound of horses and boots and shouted commands echoed across the yard. "They've got us surrounded," Cole said, eyes half-lidded but focused. Mary peeked up through a crack in the counter. She counted 5 men, 2 flanking toward the stables, 1 behind the well, and another crouched near the trading post's porch. Denton stood boldly in the open, reloading with a calmness that turned her stomach. "We've got maybe 6 rounds between us," she whispered. "Any more in that belt of yours?" Cole pulled it free with shaking hands. 3. Hollow points. Make them count. Mary checked her Colt, then her father's Winchester. She had 1 shell left in the repeater. Her jaw clenched. "How good's your aim when you're not half dead?" Cole grunted. "Better than theirs when they think this is already over." Mary nodded. "All right, you get the man by the porch. I'll cover the stables. If we can take 2 of them, maybe the rest." The window to their left exploded. They both dropped instinctively as a slug embedded itself in the back wall. Smoke filled the air. The wood cracked and groaned as more rounds slammed into the cabin. One of the shelves tipped, books and tools scattering across the floor like broken thoughts. Mary's breath came in short, sharp bursts. Her hands were shaking now, not with fear but adrenaline. "This place won't hold forever," Cole said. "No," she agreed, then grabbed the kerosene lamp from the corner and hurled it through the front window. The glass shattered midair and flames spilled out like a scream, splashing across the porch. A man cursed and fell back, his coat catching fire. Horses reared and neighed in panic. That gave them 2 seconds, maybe 3. Mary stood and fired. 1 shot slammed into the man near the well. He dropped, clawing at his neck. Another ran for cover behind a barrel, but caught a round in the thigh. Cole rose, took aim with both hands trembling, and fired toward the porch. The man Denton had posted there screamed and dropped his rifle as a slug tore through his shoulder. Smoke began to fill the trading post. The flames on the porch weren't spreading fast, but the wind was changing. "We've got to move," Mary said. "Where?" Cole asked, breathing hard. His face was pale now, streaked with sweat. Mary's mind raced. "The cellar." Cole's eyes widened. "You have a cellar. Trapdoor under the rug. Storm shelter." He nodded weakly. "Lead the way." Mary grabbed her shotgun and helped him to his feet. His weight nearly dragged her down, but she braced and half-carried him toward the back of the room. With her boot, she kicked the corner of the rug back, revealing a wooden hatch ringed with iron. She wrenched it open. Darkness yawned below. "Go," she ordered. Cole didn't argue. He slid down first, landing with a grunt. Mary followed, pulling the trapdoor closed above them just as another wave of bullets riddled the cabin. Down in the dark, the air was cool and damp. The earthen walls muffled the chaos above. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just breathed. Mary lit a stub of a candle. Its flickering light revealed barrels of flour, dried goods, and an old cot. She helped Cole onto it, then slumped down beside him. "Your father built this?" he asked, voice rasping. "Yeah. Set was in case the world ever ended." Cole gave a weak smile. "Feels about right." She checked his wound again. It had reopened, but not enough to bleed him dry. "Not yet." "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. Mary frowned. "For what?" "For bringing this to your door. For making you fight." She stared at him a long moment. "You didn't make me fight, Cole," she said quietly. "I chose to." Outside, the gunfire slowed, then stopped. They listened. Hoofbeats. Then silence. "Are they leaving?" Mary whispered. Cole shook his head. "No. They're regrouping, or waiting for fire to finish the job." Mary nodded. "We've got maybe an hour in here. After that, smoke will find us." She stood, reloaded the Colt with trembling fingers, then walked to the ladder. "What are you doing?" Cole asked. "Buying us more time. You can't go up alone." "I'm not staying down here like a rabbit in a trap." Cole tried to rise, but pain pinned him down. Mary turned to him, eyes hard. "Watch the ladder," she said. "If someone else comes down, don't wait." Then she climbed. The trapdoor creaked open. Smoke poured in, stinging her eyes, choking her throat. The cabin above was ruined, holes in the walls, broken glass everywhere, fire licking at the beams. But it hadn't collapsed yet. Mary stepped over the rubble like a ghost, moving toward the front window. And there, on the horizon, she saw them. The riders. Reforming. And something else. Another figure. A girl. Small. Hair tangled, dress torn. Tied to a horse. Mary's blood turned to ice. "They brought her back," she whispered. "To bargain. Or bait." Behind her, Cole dragged himself up the ladder, coughing. "She alive?" he rasped. Mary nodded. "Looks it." Denton stepped forward, arms raised. His voice rang out across the prairie. "Come out, ma'am. Let's settle this civil. No need for more blood." Mary stared. Then she stepped outside. The dust rolled low across the prairie as Mary stepped out of the half-ruined trading post, shotgun resting across her arms like a challenge. Her boots crunched on the scorched wood of the porch, still smoldering in places. Smoke curled around her legs like warning fingers. Ahead, Denton stood at the front of his men, just beyond rifle range. His coat flapped lazily in the breeze, his hat shadowing eyes that had seen and caused too much death. Beside him, the girl. She couldn't have been more than 16. Her hands were bound, face bruised, hair tangled with sweat and dirt. Her eyes locked on Mary with something between hope and disbelief. She was alive, but barely. Denton raised his hand, grinning like a man who thought he was already 3 moves ahead. "Now that's better," he called. "No need for all the fire and noise. Let's talk." Mary didn't move. Her eyes flicked over the terrain, for men still alive, spread wide. One near the barn, another flanking left along the dry creek bed. 2 by the girl, hands on their holsters. "I'm listening," she said flatly. Denton tipped his head. "Simple deal, really. Give us coal. We leave. You and your little store can go back to counting beans and chasing coyotes." Mary didn't blink. "You don't seem the type to honor deals." The smile on his face didn't reach his eyes. "I'm all about honor, ma'am. Man steals from me, I collect. That's how the West works. That girl he tried to save, she belonged to someone. Her daddy sold her fair and square. That wasn't Cole's business. Mary felt her stomach churn. She's not a sack of flour, she said coldly. Denton laughed. Maybe not. But out here, people are property. Land. Livestock. Brides. All the same in the eyes of men who survive long enough to own something. Mary raised the shotgun slightly. Then maybe you're overdue to lose something. There was a pause. Tension stretched across the distance like a tripwire. Then Denton's eyes narrowed. You don't have enough bullets for all of us. I don't need all of you, Mary said. Just you. Denton's smile vanished. From inside the trading post, Cole's voice rang out, loud, steady. Denton, you want me? I'm here. He stepped through the broken doorway, legs shaking but upright, pistol hanging low in his hand. His shirt was soaked through with blood, but his eyes burned with something fierce and unrelenting. Mary's heart sank. Cole, don't. He raised his free hand to her. This ain't your fight. She stepped forward anyway, teeth clenched. You're bleeding out. I'd rather die now than let that girl go back to hell. There was silence. Denton's brows rose. How noble. How stupid. Then he nodded toward the man holding the girl. Bring her forward. The man shoved her ahead. She stumbled but caught herself. Mary noticed something. Her hands weren't tied anymore. She looked back at the trading post and saw a glint in the girl's hand. A blade. Tiny. Hidden. She was ready. Denton didn't notice. Here's the deal, he said. You drop your gun. Walk to me. The girl lives. You resist. I got her where she stands. Cole didn't move. Then, let her go first. Denton chuckled. Not how this works. Mary tensed, every nerve on fire. The girl moved, just a flicker. And then everything happened at once. The girl twisted, driving the blade into the nearest man's leg. He screamed, dropped to one knee. She ducked, rolled. Mary fired, the shotgun roaring like thunder, sending a blast into the second man's chest. He fell without a sound. Cole raised his pistol, aimed at Denton. Denton was faster. His gun barked once. Mary screamed. Cole staggered, fell to one knee. Mary turned her weapon on Denton, finger tightening. But the girl moved first. She grabbed the fallen man's pistol and fired wildly. One shot clipped Denton's arm. He cursed, staggered back. Mary took her chance. Her last round found his chest, just left of center. He dropped his gun, then dropped to the ground. Dust rose around him like a final breath. Silence. Only the wind spoke now. Mary lowered her weapon, chest heaving. The girl ran to her, eyes wide, breath ragged. You came out for me, she whispered. Mary nodded, voice barely a rasp. Nobody else would. They turned to Cole. He lay half-slumped against the wall of the post, blood seeping again from his side. Mary dropped to her knees. Stay with me. Cole, hey, look at me. He smiled weakly. Told you I wasn't built to dance. You're not dying, she snapped, pressing cloth to the wound. Feels like I might. Mary's voice cracked. You can't. The girl dropped beside them. I can help. I've wrapped wounds before. I'll get water. She ran. Mary looked into Cole's face. He stared back, eyes clouding but calm. You didn't have to fight for me, he whispered. Mary shook her head. No, I had to fight with you. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. You're stubborn. Damn right. He coughed, but there was laughter in it. The girl returned with water and a cloth. Mary worked quickly, fingers steady despite the tremor in her chest. They weren't safe yet, but they had survived. And in a place like Dust Creek, that was rare enough to mean something. As the sun slipped lower behind the hills, painting the sky in gold and blood, Mary sat beside Cole on the porch of the broken store and held the girl's hand tight in hers. You've got a name, she asked. The girl nodded. Clara. Well, Clara, Mary said, glancing at Cole, how do you feel about staying a while? Clara looked between them. I think this place might finally be the right kind of dangerous. Mary smiled. So did Cole. And for the first time in a long while, Dust Creek breathed. The next morning came not with sunlight, but with silence. Thick, settling silence, the kind that blankets a place after the smoke clears and the dying is done. Dust Creek had always been a quiet patch of earth, but now that quiet felt different. Not peaceful, just waiting. Mary sat beside the cot in the back room of the trading post, dipping a rag into a bowl of lukewarm water. Cole lay still, his face pale as parchment, his breath shallow but steady. The bullet hadn't killed him, but had come close. Too close. She dabbed his brow, careful not to wake him. His shirt had been cut away, the wound wrapped in layers of linen and poultice. The fever had come during the night, but she'd fought it back, tooth and nail, hour by hour. She wasn't about to lose him, not after all they'd survived. In the corner, Clara sat cross-legged on the floor, sharpening a small blade against a piece of stone. The blood had been scrubbed from her hands, but not from her memory. Every now and then, she paused, like she was listening for something only she could hear. Her eyes were older than they had any right to be. Mary glanced at her. "You sleep at all?" Clara didn't look up. Didn't feel right. Mary understood. She rose and poured herself a tin cup of black coffee, burnt, bitter, perfect. She took it outside, stepping into the cool morning air. The horizon was hazy, the world quiet. The corpses had been burned just before dawn, a small pyre at the edge of the creek bed. It hadn't felt like justice, but it had felt necessary. The porch creaked beneath her boots as she sat on the top step and stared at the road beyond the hills. No dust trail, no riders, just emptiness. That should have brought comfort. It didn't. Behind her, the door creaked open. Clara stepped out, arms folded across her chest. She wore one of Mary's old shirts now, too big for her, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, and her tangled hair had been tied back in a simple braid. "He's strong," she said. Mary nodded. "Stubborn, too. That helps." Clara lowered herself beside her, knees pulled to her chest. "Back where they took me," she said quietly, "one of the men told me that if I tried to run again, they'd cut my feet off and feed me to the dogs." Mary said nothing. "I believed him," Clara added. "For a while." Mary looked at her. "What changed?" Clara's eyes met hers, calm, steady. "I saw you. When you walked out onto that porch, I thought, no one's ever done that. Not for me." Mary exhaled through her nose. "Well," she said, sipping her coffee, "you deserved better. That's all." Clara didn't reply, but she leaned her shoulder lightly against Mary's. Not enough to cling, just enough to mean something. They sat like that for a while. Eventually Mary asked, "Where were you before all this? Before Denton?" Clara hesitated. "My father sold me. Said there wasn't enough food to go around. Said I owed him for being born." Mary's stomach twisted. "You were just a child." Clara shrugged. "Some men stop seeing their daughters once they hit 12. Only see what they can trade." Mary clenched her jaw. "You ever want to find him again?" "Only to spit on his grave." They both stared out at the empty road. "He might still be alive," Mary said. Clara didn't blink. "Then I'm still waiting." Inside, Cole stirred. Mary set her cup down and rose. "Coming?" she asked. Clara nodded. Together, they stepped back into the shadows of the store, where the air still smelled of smoke and old blood, and the man who had changed everything lay clinging to the edge of sleep. Cole's eyes fluttered open as Mary approached. "You're awake," she said. "Hard to sleep," he rasped, "when the world feels like it's spinning." "That's the fever." He squinted at her. "Still here, huh?" "Unfortunately for you." Clara smiled from the corner. Cole's gaze shifted toward her, and something softened in his expression. "You all right?" Clara nodded. "I'm not broken." He closed his eyes again. "Good." Mary pulled a chair closer to the cot, and Saturday. "How much do you remember?" "Enough," he said. "Denton's dead." "Burned." "Good." Silence settled between them for a moment, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then Mary asked, "You gonna tell me what that girl really meant to you?" Cole's eyes opened again. This time he didn't look away. "My sister had a daughter," he said slowly. "Name was June. Sweetest kid you ever met. When she was 14, some men came through their homestead. Took everything, including her." Mary listened without interrupting. "We found her 2 weeks later. Too late. She died in my arms." His voice cracked just a little. "I swore if I ever saw another girl with that look in her eyes, the look of someone who'd already been buried once, I'd pull her out, no matter the cost." Clara blinked fast, but didn't look away. Mary swallowed. "You did." Cole nodded faintly. "Didn't think I'd live to see it matter." "You did," Mary said again. The wind shifted outside. Mary stood. "You need rest." "And you?" Cole asked. She gave him a half-smile. "I need coffee, clean bandages, and to figure out what the hell we do next." Clara stepped forward. "I can help. I'm good with sewing. And traps. I've hunted before." Mary arched an eyebrow. Traps. Rabbits, Clara said with a grin. Not outlaws. But hey, we all start somewhere. Mary laughed softly, her first in weeks. Cole smiled, too. We make a strange bunch. Maybe, Mary said, glancing around the battered interior of her father's old store. But maybe strange is exactly what Dust Creek needs. 3 days passed. The wind shifted, the sky softened, and Dust Creek began to breathe again. The bodies were gone. The broken porch had been torn down and rebuilt plank by plank, with Clara holding nails between her teeth and Mary swinging the hammer like it owed her something. Cole, still pale and weak, watched from a chair in the shade with a rifle across his lap, just in case. The silence was different now. Not waiting, not grieving, settling. On the 4th morning, Mary found herself walking the old ridge trail her father had once cleared. It curved along the hilltop west of a store where the grass grew longer and the view stretched for miles. She'd come here as a child, back when her mother was still alive, and the world had more color. Now the grass was brittle and gold. The wind was sharp, dry as paper. She stopped at the edge of the overlook, staring out at the vast, sunlit emptiness. Below, Dust Creek shimmered in the heat, nothing more than a smudge of life on an endless canvas. Footsteps crunched behind her. Didn't mean to sneak up, said Cole's voice, low and hoarse. She turned. He leaned on a makeshift crutch, one arm bandaged tight. His shirt hung loose, and his face was drawn with exhaustion, but he was standing. On his own. Mary offered a dry smile. You're supposed to be resting. Hard to rest when your nurse threatens to tie you to a cot, he said, easing himself down onto a flat rock. Clara, she's got your attitude. Poor thing. They sat in silence for a while. The wind moved gently around them, stirring dust and memory alike. Looks peaceful from up here, Cole said. It always does, Mary replied, until something rides in and tears it apart. He nodded slowly. Still worth protecting, though. She didn't answer at first. Then, yeah, I think it is. Cole glanced sideways at her. You ever think of leaving? Used to. Thought about California. Oregon, maybe? Someplace green. So why didn't you? Mary's jaw tensed. My father died in that store. My mother before him. I buried them both with my own hands. Thought if I stayed long enough, maybe I'd matter more than the ghosts. Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he said, maybe the ghosts don't want you to leave. Maybe they're still waiting to see what you'll build. Mary looked at him. And what about you? When you can ride again, where will you go? He shrugged, winced. Don't know. Used to think the road was all I had. But lately. He trailed off. She didn't press. Behind them, a soft voice called out. Mary. They turned. Clara came running up the ridge path, cheeks flushed, braid bouncing behind her. She held a folded piece of parchment in her hand. What is it? Mary asked. Clara handed her the paper. Ryder came through while you were up here. Said he was heading west, passed along this letter. Mary unfolded it, eyes scanning the scrawled ink. Her brow furrowed. Trouble? Cole asked. She shook her head slowly. A name I haven't heard in 10 years. Luther Dorsey. Clara frowned. Who is he? Mary's voice was tight. Used to ride with my father. Rancher now. Outside of Green Hollow. Says he needs help. Said the land's being stolen. Said the law stopped listening. Cole leaned forward. That name means something to you. He taught me how to shoot, Mary said softly, and how to tell when a man is lying with his eyes. Clara looked between them. You think it's a trap? Mary shook her head. No, but it's something. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her coat. Cole studied her. You thinking of going? Mary didn't answer immediately. Then, if there's folks out there still fighting for what's right, maybe Dust Creek ain't the only place worth saving. Cole leaned back against the rock. Then I guess we'd better fix that wagon axle. Mary blinked. We? He grinned, thin, worn, but real. Can't let you ride off into trouble alone. I'd lose all my charm. Clara crossed her arms. And what about me? Mary raised an eyebrow. You're staying. Clara's eyes narrowed. The hell I am. Cole laughed, then coughed. Mary sighed. Fine, she said, but you're both listening to me this time. Clara smirked. Sure, like that ever works. They turned and looked back down at Dust Creek. It was no longer just a store, not just a place to survive. It was a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, a place to return to. That night, Mary packed quietly. One rifle, one revolver, a pouch of bullets, her father's old journal, a canteen, 3 apples. Cole sat near the stove, mending the leather strap on a saddlebag. Clara brushed Dusty's coat until it gleamed in the firelight. Outside, the coyotes sang again, but their song no longer sounded like a warning. It sounded like the road calling. The sun hadn't yet cleared the ridgeline when Mary tightened the last saddle strap on Dusty and stepped back, squinting into the golden haze of morning. The world was quiet, painted in soft orange and long shadows. It would be a hot day. Dry, the kind that wore down even the strongest riders. Behind her, Cole adjusted the bandage on his ribs beneath a loose canvas vest. He moved slower than usual, stiff, careful, but he was moving. Clara checked the cinch on her horse, a mare with a stubborn streak they'd borrowed from an old trapper who owed Mary a favor. "You sure about this?" Cole asked, wincing as he mounted up. Mary glanced at him. "You planning to ask that every mile?" "Every third, maybe." She swung into her own saddle, adjusting her coat collar against the dust. "Then keep count. We've got at least 80 to go." Clara grinned from atop her smaller horse. "How many outlaws you think we'll run into before noon?" Mary shot her a look. "None if we're lucky." "But we're not lucky," Cole muttered. "No," Mary said. "We're stubborn." And with that, they rode. The trail to Green Hollow cut through wide, open flats and canyon edges where the wind screamed down rock faces and carried secrets with it. Mary led, Cole rode center, and Clara watched their rear, eyes sharp as hawks. They stopped only twice that first day. Once for water, once when Clara spotted a snake coiled in the path, its skin the color of rust. They made camp just past a dry creek bed, the sky a bowl of stars overhead. The fire was small, tucked into a ring of stones. Clara cooked beans in a battered tin pot, while Cole cleaned his revolver and Mary studied the stars with the quiet focus of someone measuring distances in her mind. "You've done this before," Clara said suddenly. Mary didn't look away from the sky. "What?" "Ride out. Hunt men. Fix things no one else would." Mary was quiet a long time. Then, a long time ago. Clara pressed gently. "What happened?" Mary sighed. "I got tired of losing." Cole looked up. "You think you'll win this time?" "I don't think about winning anymore," she said. "I think about what's right, and what I can live with." Clara stirred the beans. "That's the only kind of winning I believe in anyway." They ate in silence, the wind curling between them like an old dog looking for a place to sleep. Later, as the fire died and the stars thickened, Mary sat apart from the others, her coat wrapped around her knees. Cole limped over and eased himself down beside her. "You ever think about settling again?" he asked. Mary stared into the coals. "I thought I had. Dust Creek felt like the kind of place ghosts went to rest." "But yours didn't." "No," she said softly. "Turns out mine still walk." He nodded, lips tight. Then he said, "Clara asked me today if I thought you liked me." Mary turned her head slowly. "What did you say?" "I said I don't know, but I sure as hell hope you do." Mary raised an eyebrow. "That's bold." "I'm injured. I get points for honesty." She looked at him a long moment. Then, "I do." He blinked. "You do?" "I do," she repeated, a faint smile playing at her lips. "But I also think you snore limp like a shot mule and ask too many damn questions." He laughed quietly. "That's fair." They sat shoulder to shoulder as the wind shifted again, bringing with it the smell of sage and the first faint signs of dawn. By the third day, the land began to change. Hills rose around them like old bones. The trail narrowed and signs of life returned, fences long broken, a rusted plow half buried in dry weeds, wagon ruts etched deep into the stone. That afternoon, they passed a burned-out farmhouse. The door hung by one hinge, and the well had been filled with dirt. Mary dismounted, staring at the structure. "This used to be the Brewster place," she murmured. "They had twin girls." "What happened?" Clara asked. "Same thing that always does out here," Mary replied. No one listened until the screaming started, and by then, there was no one left to help. Cole looked down the road. "Think Dorsey's still breathing?" "If he's not," Mary said, "we're going to find out who made sure of it." They rode in silence the rest of that day, nerves taut. That evening, just as the light began to die, they spotted the edge of Green Hollow. It wasn't much, a collection of weathered buildings tucked against a shallow valley. Smoke rose from one chimney. A horse stood tied to a post. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Mary held up a hand. "Stay here." She rode ahead slowly, one hand on her rifle. When she reached the edge of town, she spotted him. Luther Dorsey. He sat on the porch of the old saloon, cradling a shotgun across his lap. His beard had gone white, his shoulders stooped with age, but the eyes were still sharp, still dangerous. Mary dismounted and walked up the steps. "Luther," she said. He looked up slowly, and then just barely he smiled. "Well," he said, "Hell must have run out of room. Mary Langston come home." Luther Dorsey rose from his porch chair like a man peeling himself from time. His shotgun rested easy across one arm, but his stance was solid, too solid for a man pushing 70. Mary stopped 2 steps from him, boots dusty, hat low. "Didn't think you'd write," she said. Luther gave a short grunt. "Didn't think you'd come." She nodded toward the shotgun, expecting someone else. "I was, but you'll do just fine." Behind her, Cole and Clara approached, their horses moving slow, ears twitching like they sensed something wrong beneath the dirt. Cole scanned the buildings, saloon, blacksmith, a shuttered post office, each too still, too quiet. "Where is everyone?" he asked. Luther didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked over the 3 of them, pausing a second longer on Clara. "She's young," he said to Mary. "She's dangerous," Mary replied. Clara raised an eyebrow. "I'm right here, you know." Luther's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He motioned them inside. The interior of the saloon was dim and cold. Most of the tables were overturned. A layer of dust coated the bar. Only one lamp burned in the back, its flame flickering nervously. Luther poured them all a tin of weak coffee, then sat behind the old poker table like a sheriff behind a desk. "Green Hollow used to be safe," he said. "Wasn't much, but it was ours. Now it's something else. Something hollow in more than name." Mary leaned forward. "You said land was being taken." Luther nodded. "Bit by bit. Crops burned, wells poisoned. Cattle gone missing. Folks who protest disappear. A few ride out. None ride back." "Who's behind it?" Cole asked. "Name's Silas Creed. Big rancher, came down from Wyoming last spring. Bought up 3 properties in less than a month. Hired guns to enforce his boundaries. Started pressuring every holdout to sell or leave." "Why not go to the law?" Mary asked. Luther barked a laugh. "He is the law, at least around here. County judge owes him. Sheriff's his cousin. And anyone who crosses him gets a warning." "What kind of warning?" Clara asked. Luther didn't speak. He just reached into a drawer and pulled out a scrap of cloth, soaked in old blood, edges torn, something burned into the corner with a branding iron. "A letter C. Creed's mark," he said. "Left this nailed to my door 2 nights ago." Mary's face hardened. "Why now? Why write me?" Luther looked at her, eyes shadowed. "Because you don't scare easy. And I'm out of time." They spent the night in the old boarding house, abandoned but cleaner than the saloon. Mary stood by the window with her arms crossed, staring out at the moonlit road. "He's telling the truth," she said. Cole sat on the edge of the bed, loading rounds into his revolver. "You sure?" "I've seen what it looks like when good men are cornered." Clara spoke from the floor, where she was sketching a crude map of the town in the dirt. "Why hasn't Creed made a move yet?" Mary turned from the window. "Because he knows we're here, and he's deciding what that means." Cole frowned. "You think he'll come at us directly?" Mary walked over and knelt beside Clara, tracing the edge of the dirt map with one finger. "No," she said. "He'll wait for nightfall. He'll wait for us to breathe easy, and then he'll come like smoke through a crack in the wall." Sure enough, the next day passed without event. The sun rose pale, hung heavy, and dropped again behind the hills like it wanted no part of what was coming. But just after dusk, they heard it. Hoofbeats. Slow. Measured. Not charging, but claiming. Mary was already at the door, rifle in hand. Cole and Clara followed. 3 riders entered the town square. The one in the center was tall and broad, his coat a deep burgundy, his hat shadowing a square jaw and clean-cut beard. His horse was black as coal and twice as proud. Silas Creed. He dismounted slowly, brushing dust from his lapels like he was stepping into church. Behind him, his men stayed on horseback, hands resting casually on polished weapons. Mary stepped into the light of the boarding house porch. Creed spotted her and smiled. Well now, he said, if it isn't the ghost of Dust Creek herself. Mary didn't respond. Creed looked around the town. You brought friends. Good. That'll save me from riding all over the county collecting them. State your business, Mary said, voice calm and sharp. Creed's smile didn't move. Luther Dorsey has overstayed his welcome. The land needs to change hands. I'm simply here to ease the transition. It's not for sale. He chuckled. That's funny, because everything out here is for sale. Even silence. Cole stepped forward, wincing slightly. What happens if we don't stay quiet? Creed's eyes flicked over him, then settled on Clara. I suppose that depends on how loud you scream when the time comes. Mary's rifle rose an inch. Creed raised his hands, palms open. I'm not here for blood. Just business. You already left blood on the ground, Mary said. We saw your mark. Creed shrugged. Warnings are cheaper than bullets. Well, I'm more expensive than both, Mary said coldly. And I'm staying. Creed's smile faded. Then we'll be neighbors. For now. He turned, mounted his horse in one smooth motion, and tipped his hat. Think on it, he called. It's a long ride back, and there's a storm coming. Then they rode out, silent as shadow. That night, the wind shifted again, and Mary Langston didn't sleep, because she knew. Storms in the west didn't come with thunder. They came on horseback. The morning after Creed's visit, Green Hollow felt different, tighter. The wind came from the east now, dragging the scent of dry sage and something darker, gun oil maybe, or fear. Mary stood by the water pump in the center of town, arms crossed, scanning the street for signs of movement. Luther was patching shutters on the saloon with thick wooden planks, whistling through clenched teeth. Clara knelt in the dirt by the boarding house, setting a tripwire trap between two stones like she'd been doing it her whole life. Cole sat in the shadow of the general store, cleaning each of their rifles in methodical silence. His ribs still gave him grief, but pain no longer slowed him. It sharpened him. Mary finally spoke. He'll come at dusk. Luther looked up. You sure? It's how men like him operate. Light gives people hope. Darkness takes it away. He nodded slowly. You've seen his kind before. She glanced over. Too many times. Cole stood, slinging a rifle over his shoulder. Then let's make sure he regrets coming at all. They met inside the church. Not for prayer, though Mary wouldn't have turned one down, but for planning. The pews were empty save for dust and echoes. The bell rope was frayed and quiet. Sunlight slanted through warped windows, striping the room with light and shadow. Mary stepped to the front, drawing a rough map of the town in chalk on the floorboards. For major entries, she said. South Trail, East Ridge, Creek Pass, and the main road. Creed'll take the main, Luther muttered. He likes being seen. Good, Mary said. We'll let him see us, while we hit him from behind. Clara raised a hand. I've got 6 traps ready, tripwire, spikes, 1 pitfall by the blacksmith shop. They won't kill, but they'll scatter. Cole nodded. I'll be on the church roof, sniping from elevation. Mary looked at Luther. You. I'll hold the saloon, reinforce the front wall, left the whiskey for the blood. Mary allowed herself a smile. Then she pulled a folded cloth from her pocket, a red kerchief. She tied it around her arm, just above the elbow. From now on, she said, if they don't wear this, they're not with us. One by one, the others followed suit. By late afternoon, the town was ready. Barrels of water lined the edges of buildings in case of fire. Ammunition was distributed. The horses were tied near the old schoolhouse with emergency saddlebags packed and waiting, just in case retreat became the only option. Mary stood on the main road, eyes fixed on the hills. And she waited. The first sound came just after sundown. A low rumble. Hooves. Then the dust rose, slow, wide, deliberate. Creed didn't sneak. He didn't hide. He arrived like a man who had already written the ending. 15 riders, well armed, spread wide. Creed rode at the front again, his coat crisp, his eyes calm. They stopped just outside the church, dust curling around their boots like smoke from an omen. Mary stepped forward, rifle in hand, red cloth tied like a vow around her arm. Creed tipped his hat. Evenin', Miss Langston. Evenin', she replied. I came to make one last offer, he said. Lay down arms. Walk away. No one else dies. Mary's voice didn't waver. You're a little late for diplomacy. Creed sighed. Then you've chosen war. No, Mary said. You did. We're just finishing what you started. Creed stared at her. Then he raised his hand. A signal. His riders dismounted in unison, and Green Hollow braced for blood. The first shot came from a rooftop. Cole's rifle cracked like a thunderclap, dropping the man nearest the well. Then chaos broke loose. Gunfire erupted on both sides, echoing off the narrow buildings, ricocheting off stone and wood. Clara's traps sprang like vipers. One horse screamed and bolted, dragging its rider into a fence. Another man tumbled into the pit trap with a crunch that silenced him forever. Luther opened fire from the saloon, his shotgun booming like judgment. Mary moved between shadows and walls, her rifle tight in her hands, counting each round, each breath. Creed's men pushed forward, but the town pushed back. It wasn't a massacre. It was a reckoning. Then came the fire. One of Creed's men lobbed a burning bottle through a window. Flames leapt to life along the boarding house eaves. Mary shouted, rallying Clara and Cole. Water north wall. They moved as one, Cole hobbling with grim determination, Clara dragging a barrel with both hands. Together, they doused the flame before it could spread, coughing, eyes burning. Then came a scream. Luther. Mary turned, saw him stagger from the saloon porch, blood streaming from a wound just below his ribs. Creed stood nearby, revolver smoking. Mary raised her rifle. But Creed moved fast, disappearing behind a wagon as bullets snapped through the air. Mary dropped beside Luther, pressed her hands to the wound. He coughed, grinning through blood. Told you I'd go down swinging, Not yet, she snapped. He gripped her wrist. Finish this. And then he went still. Mary stood, cold, clear. She turned toward the wagon. Creed emerged, slow, deliberate. Their eyes met across 20 feet. No one else moved. No one else mattered. Mary raised her rifle. Creed raised his pistol. And in the breath between heartbeats, they fired. 2 gunshots cracked the night, loud and final. Mary's shoulder slammed back from the force of recoil. Creed staggered, blood blooming from his chest like ink in water. For a moment, he remained upright, eyes wide, disbelief painted across his face. Then he dropped to his knees and fell. Silence gripped Green Hollow like a sudden breath held too long. Creed's men hesitated, confused, scattered. From the rooftops, Cole fired again, clean, precise. Another of Creed's riders fell, and the rest broke like splinters on stone. One by one, they retreated, some on horseback, some dragging themselves through the dust. None stayed to retrieve Creed's body. Mary stood motionless for a moment, the rifle still in her hands, the smoke curling around her like a shroud. Then she lowered the weapon. Clara ran toward her, face streaked with ash and tears, Cole limping behind, pale but standing. It's over, Clara breathed. Mary looked around at the burned edges of the town, the broken fences, the blood in the dirt. No, she said quietly. It's beginning. They buried Luther Dorsey beneath the old oak near the church. The stone was plain, hand-carved. No scripture, no grand words. Just a name, a year, and the phrase he'd said before falling. Finish this. Mary stood over the grave alone for a long while, the wind whispering through the branches. He believed in this place, Cole said gently, stepping beside her. Mary nodded. Then we'll make it worth it. In the following weeks, the town changed. Clara whitewashed the church walls herself, climbed the roof with a brush and a bucket, and painted a cross that could be seen from half a mile off. She planted corn behind the boarding house, built a rabbit trap behind the stable, and started calling herself deputy without waiting for permission. Cole stayed. He never said why, but he fixed the store window, built a bench outside the saloon, and took to walking the town with a rifle across his back and a half-smile for anyone brave enough to say good morning. Mary reopened the trading post. Not for profit, but for people. She stocked it with what she could scavenge, trade, or build. Tools, beans, books. She painted the sign over the door herself. It no longer read Langston and Company. Now it read, Dust Creek Mercantile, open to all, closed to cowards. And people came. At first, just drifters. Then settlers, families, farmers from nearby valleys who'd heard what Mary Langston had done, what she'd stood for. And slowly, Dust Creek bloomed from the ashes. One evening, weeks later, Mary sat on the porch with a tin cup of coffee and the sunset painting the sky in wild, defiant color. Cole sat beside her, his hand brushing hers. Clara leaned against the post, whittling a wooden star with her knife. "You ever think about what comes next?" Clara asked. Mary sipped. "Next storm? Next fight? Next breath? All of it." Mary looked out across the horizon, the place where the land met the sky and the past met the road. "No," she said. "I don't think about it much." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" Mary smiled. "Because for the first time in a long while, I'm exactly where I belong." And as the stars blinked awake above the land they had fought for, Dust Creek settled into the kind of silence that wasn't waiting for trouble.